Sorry, Sean. I deleted the motion, so I'm hoping you inadvertently. Can you just take care of that?
I got it.
Okay, thank you.
We're good. Good. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. And I will call upon Ms. Smithers for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you for that, and good afternoon, members of council. So I grew up in southern Ontario, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lepanawak, and Attawandaron First Nations. I moved to Alberta about 35 years ago, and I like to say that school brought me here and the Bow Valley kept me here. I remember, even when I first moved here, driving out to the mountains, and just when you crest Scott Lake Hill and you're coming down just east of Meneathny by Bear Hill Road, and that vast expanse of the Rockies opens in front of you. And it would always just floor me and fill me with a sense of awe and wonder and a moment to get centered and breathe. And I remember telling myself, and I still think this to this day, if I ever stop feeling that, I need to move, because I should never take that for granted. The past couple of weeks have really, for me, had me focused on a concern and interest in housing and health, both personally and professionally. And that can be a bit overwhelming at times. And last week, one day when I came into work, it was when there was still a full moon, and the full moon hung so bright over the Rundle Range, and you could see it through the clouds. And I had that same feeling that I get coming over that ridge by Bear Hill Road, where I just stopped and had this sense of awe and wonder. And it reminded me to just breathe and center myself in the midst of this concern around housing and health. And it really got me thinking about the intersectionality of the things that have been occupying my mind, and the intersectionality of those things with the land, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And it really helped to shift me from that sense of overwhelm to really a sense of gratitude. Because I feel incredibly grateful to live here in the Bow Valley. And I feel grateful to live in and work for a community that cares deeply about the land and how it intersects with health and livability and resilience. And a community that has a strong commitment to reconciliation and living in right relations. So with that, I acknowledge and appreciate that we are meeting here today in Treaty 7 region. This land is the traditional territory and home of the Stoney Nakoda Nations of Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki, the Blackfoot Confederacy of Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Battle River Territory District 4 Métis. And as we gather in this territory, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people. I commit to working to live in right relations, to advance truth and reconciliation, and to acknowledge the many First Nations and Métis whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smithers. Turning to item A2, the agenda, there is one addition, and that will be I1, a closed session. And that's with respect to the judicial review of Division of Class 1 Property Bylaw 2024-19. The reason for the closed session is legal privilege, and so I'll make that motion when the time comes. So with that change then, looking to ask the question, all those in favor? Carried unanimously, the motion being that we approve the agenda for the January 21st, 2025 committee, the whole meeting as amended. Anybody wish to change their vote? All right. That is approved unanimously. Getting my rhythm here. C1, minutes of December 17th, committee of the whole meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll then move that we approve the minutes of the December 17th, 2024 committee of the whole meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Just wondering why it was so difficult finding the words for the motion or for the question, and I hadn't made the motion yet. All right, we'll move on to D1, Assessment Review Board membership options. Ms. Hyde. welcome to Committee of the Whole. Whenever you're ready, the mic is yours.
This worked in our practice session. Stand by. Here, let's just do this. All right, thank you. That's what didn't work. That's what I tried. Oh, it's there. Excellent. Thanks for your patience. The reason I'm here today is because of a few motions that council made at our annual organizational meeting in October. And the motions were to basically reach out to our neighboring municipalities, the MD and Banff, to see if we could come up with some solutions for having some more ARB board members available for Canmore. So I did, just to remind you of what we were looking at the org meeting. So right now we have 2 public members appointed and 2 members of council appointed to the ARB. When we have to have a panel, the requirement for the local assessment review board, so that's the LARB, is 3 members and a maximum of 1 councillor. So we're tight, right? Like that's almost exactly how many that we have. And that's probably most of our appeals as well. So the LARB is for residences, 3plexes and under. Last year, the hearings go up and down, but last year we had 11 hearings and probably expect to have at least that many again coming up in 2025. So the idea was we were hoping to get some more members available for our panels. So I did talk to Banff and the MD. And the first thing we did talk about was a regional ARB, because that has come up with us before. We did decide at the end that the other 2 municipalities, they barely get any appeals. So it's some work to set up this regional board, and it's an election year, so there just wasn't really an appetite from them to go down this path at this time, not saying it's off the table for the future. But what we did talk about is whether or not members of our boards could sit on each other's boards. And Banff actually has in their bylaw, it's spelled out that they will take members from other municipalities. Our bylaw is actually silent on it. So we don't have an eligibility requirement in the ARB bylaw that says we have to have someone from Canmore. So it is open already. It wouldn't require a change to our bylaw if we wanted to open up the ability for applicants from other municipalities. It wouldn't require an intermunicipal agreement to share members with the other municipalities, but we did talk about is updating our recruitment materials this year so that maybe people applying for the ARB in all 3 communities could tick a box if they were interested in applying for the other municipalities as well, and maybe start encouraging people to sit on multiple. There is a fairly rigorous training requirement, so it does make sense for someone who's done the training once to maybe be available for more panels. Anecdotally, there's probably 1 member in Banff and 1 member in the MD right now who are open to applying here, so we might have some luck there. If you go with this option, I would also recommend that we just advertise again. We'll put some more ads out the way we usually advertise for recruitment, and just make sure it's clear that we'll accept people from all 3 municipalities. And then I just wanted to mention, we didn't know about this option until we did the research, but the City of Red Deer does operate a regional board that you can partner into, and I explained it in the staff report, the fee and what's involved, but if you partner with the City of Red Deer, which again, depending on how many appeals we get once the community grows, it might be an option for the future, but when they take over, they do everything. So basically, we just send every appeal to them, and they run the whole show. So that's what you get for the money there if you decide to partner with the City of Red Deer. And that's it. So these were the options that we presented for the Committee of the Whole to decide, like whether to just re-advertise and see if we can attract some members from the other municipalities, or to explore going with the regional partnership with Red Deer. And that's it, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hyde. Now, before asking for questions, I'll just let council know that, or Committee of the Whole know that it's my intent to bring the first motion around seeking interested parties in Banff and MD, as well as publicly advertising, re-advertising. So if you're thinking otherwise, in addition to any questions, please feel free to speak up. So Councillor Graham, you have a question or a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Hyde. I noticed in your staff report, you mentioned that the honorarium for the Red Deer Board is 20% higher than ours. And I wonder if you could speak to that. You know, are we paying enough of an honorarium currently to attract the members that we need on that board?
You know, it's interesting, I've never had any feedback anyway.
I wonder if we could just
right?
wait 1 second here.
Sorry?
I can't hear anything.
You can't hear me?
There's the people behind you. Just hold on 1 second.
Oh, my goodness.
They heard your presentation
Wow.
and just,
Everybody, we're accepting applications for the
Yeah.
Assessment Review Board.
I think all of these are applicants.
Excellent.
There you go.
I don't know is the answer to your question, Councillor Graham. I've never had any feedback from the members that we have now that it's too low or someone didn't apply because it was too low. Many of our committees are volunteers, so, I mean, even the fact that you get an honorarium is kind of, I think, unusual. So I don't know the answer to that, if we should look into increasing the fee.
Thank you, Ms. Hyde.
Yeah.
Councillor Merrow.
Thank you, Cheryl. Ms. Hyde, how many applicants did we have last year for,
3.
did you mention that? 3
Yeah,
applicants?
3 applicants and 2 were appointed.
And 2 were appointed, okay.
Yeah.
And more than one appeal can be held on a day, correct? On
Yes.
one day?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on the ARB, so I do know
Yeah.
some of these answers.
Yep.
I just want to put it there, as Councillor McCallum is also. I was more looking at option 2 to put maybe a little more, you know, put it out there again, saying we need this, and see if there is that, but I am open to option 1 also.
No,
And,
the first motion I was referring to is with respect to option 2.
oh, okay, I
The-
apologize.
The
That was
option
my
1 was
mistake.
not recommended and there was no option.
Okay,
or
I'm
no-
sorry.
Right, yeah,
no-
sorry, that is
No
good.
motion
Okay.
provided.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I apologize. My mistake. Yeah, so you answered my question, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Thank you, Ms. Hyde.
Thank you.
So I will move that the Committee of the Whole direct administration to re-advertise Assessment Review Board public member vacancies and bring a report to council requesting the appointment of interested Banff and MD of Bighorn Assessment Review Board public members, as well as other applicants from the 3 municipalities to the Canmore Assessment Review Board prior to April 30th, 2025. And just speaking to the motion, I think that this, I mean, even if we were to get 2 more members, that would make a world of difference, but hopefully we'll get more. And so I certainly support moving in this direction. And I trust that when it is re-advertised, it will be sent directly to Banff and the MB as well, so they can circulate to their members. Anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor McCallum.
I don't want to speak to the motion. I have a process question, though, Your Worship. So we don't really do many motions within Committee of the Whole. So are we recommending this to council and then this will come to council for a ratification at our next business meeting?
No, it was just Committee of the Whole directing this process to begin. It's in response to a council motion. Dr. Cottle, do you have anything to add in that regard?
Yeah, you're right. We don't do many motions at the Committee of the Whole, so it is unusual, but
It's
it
kind
is.
of like Finance Committee, we kind of recommend it.
Yeah, so it'll ultimately come back to council for approval.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yes, so
Ratification,
you
yeah.
won't have to re-ratify this motion, but the result of the work that Ms. Hyde does will come back to council for
okay.
approval.
And just like Finance Committee, there are some things that are delegated to it that they can make decisions on.
Thanks, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or speaking to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And so we'll now move to D2. And Ms. Smithers, you're going to introduce those who are here actually for D2 and not to apply for the Assessment Review Board, correct?
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
Some of them might be interested.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you and hello again, council. And yes, I'm here to introduce The team that has been contracted by the town to advance our work on the development of the Mustache lands in Palliser. I want to start with them being here and what they're going to share with you today is good news, but we have some additional good news too. The town was recently successful in obtaining a sustainable affordable housing grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in the amount of $189,980. We're really excited about this, and the team led by Ground Cube actually did the heavy lifting and pulling that application together. So I think that partnership we have with them is already paying off in spades. And I will just say council at the regular meeting, February 4th, will be considering a recommendation to create a new project specific to the Mustache lands and then integrate that grant funding into the overall project funding for that new capital project. So more to come on that. But here today to talk about the feasibility study for the Mustache lands, which is funded by that grant, is a rather large contingent led by Ground Cubed and being coordinated quite fantastically by Bronte MacArthur. So I'm going to turn it over to her to walk you through the presentation and introduce the rest of her team.
Great, thank you. And welcome everyone to the community of the whole.
Should work into that one. Okay. Water report. Would anyone like a hard copy of the presentation before we get going?
It sometimes takes a moment.
All good.
Here we go.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Thank you, Whitney, for introducing me. My name is Bronte MacArthur. I'm Principal and Landscape Architect with Ground Cubed, based here in Canmore. I'd like to start by introducing the project team, as we're all going to speak today as we all work together as a team, as a group, on these projects. I was going to have them all stand up, but we can start with Greg. Do you want to introduce yourself? Do you want me to introduce you? I can just do, okay.
Yeah.
We have Greg Stewart, partner and landscape architect with Ground Cubed. Matthew Parks, a partner with Dialogue. Lee Prevost with Boundary Design, focused on affordable housing. Kelly Learned with Frank Plan, she's leading the engagement. And Ebony Rempel with the YWCA. We do have one other project team member who unfortunately couldn't be here today, Sean Jones with Colliers. So this project started with looking to the Palliser Trail ASP, such a great visioning document for this neighborhood, and really looking to the flexibility in it and what the vision is and will be for this community. So really starting with that the Palliser Trail area will become a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood with diverse populations, accessible housing opportunities, and spaces for local business. It will be defined by its network of attractive public spaces and demonstrate commitment to walkability, environmentally sensitive design, fostering a sense of connection to the surrounding natural environment. So with this, we're looking at Site 7 of the ASP. So we're really starting with what is the ASP looking at for this parcel. So we're looking at 250 to 350 residential units, mixed-use buildings up to 6 stories in height, the goal of 100% residential, non-market affordable units, and 2,000 to 4,000 square meters of other uses, so commercial, social enterprise, other uses of the land. One other expert from the AXP looking at transportation, so having key transportation networks in and through this parcel, looking at a main roadway with walking, cycling, transportation facilities, really building into that entire network, pathways, plazas,
and a landscape buffer to the Trans-Canada. Looking at the parcel and the surrounding adjacent neighborhood, we're looking at the Blackerston Building, the Hector, the future 100 Palliser Lane, and the Peaks that's already existing on the site. I'm going to have Greg come up and speak to some of the site analysis and considerations.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, the first step is really trying to understand how do we get all the aspirational elements of the ASP onto a very specific site. And the workshop that we had with you previously, got into that, but this is a bit of a review of what we think about when we start to apply planning level and make that, planning level aspirations into design reality. So we've got a very unique site, and what we want to do is design something that fits here and really nowhere else. So looking at the site, we've got a slight slope from the top of the screen down to the bottom. It's about 2 meters, fairly gentle, but enough of significance there. We've got a wildlife corridor on the opposite side of Palliser Trail. So when we design these projects, we're looking at being good neighbors, and that means more than just good neighbors to the residential around it, but to the environment. What an amazing site in terms of light. So having access to sun in this valley is incredible, so we want to harness that. So we'll see how we've started to think about that. And controlling things like wind. So we don't want it to be a wind tunnel when it's all done. We want a strong presence on Palliser Trail. So what that means when you drive down there, we've applied the city's cross-section, which you'll see in the design, where we've got a median and boulevard on each side, as well as pathways and movements for pedestrian and cyclists. We know that there's constraints on the site as well. So Trans-Canada Trail, or Trans-Canada Highway, how we mitigate sound and safety. So thinking about how people are going to move future either underpass or overpass, crossing the Trans-Canada Highway, and what we do on our site's important not to kind of impede what that is all about. And what else? It's just really we're trying to make something that is site-specific for this special place. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Greg. I'm going to have Lee speak to the project timeline.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Yeah, so we are at the very first step of the real stages that we work on here. So we came to you with a workshop last March, and we put together a funding application that was based on that workshop and some of our understanding of what the funders are looking for. But that's really just pre-work. That's almost like seed funding level of work. So we submitted that funding application last spring. I guess it was about May. And then we knew it was going to be about a 6-month review period for that application. So we used that time to try to meet with interested parties for that site. So we met with, primarily we were focused on housing providers, but we were also interested in anyone else that would be interested in using that site. So we got a little bit of information about the types of uses and types of services that could be valuable on our site. But here we are at the start of our schematic design phase. And this aligns with the requirements of the funding that was just announced today, the funding that we received from FCM. So what we have to do here is put together a conceptual design that satisfies a range of needs that we identify through a stakeholder engagement phase in the community. We need to cost that. We need to cost that design that we put together, and then we need to determine if it's viable, and if so, what does that viability look like? That's related to the number of residential units, the types of rents that are charged, how deep the affordability is there any market housing in there, what amount of commercial retail space will exist. In that commercial retail space, what are the revenues that we can expect to generate? Is there room in there for social enterprise? And if so, what is that going to look like on the project? So we're trying to put together a concept that encapsulates all of the most viable uses on that site that we can come up with, and then determine the cost of that, and then build out some rough early operating budgets and capital budgets. When we get to that stage, we'll be able to determine if there's a viable solution that incorporates a large amount of affordable housing on this site. And if so, that would ultimately be the results that we would be bringing back to council. It's about a 5-month process from where we are today to come back to you with a feasibility report. So that would be sometime in May. If that's accepted and we've got a good solution, then we would be at the same time initiating land use on the site. So coming to you sometime in May with land use, returning in June for a public hearing, and then moving on into the next stage of work. At that stage, we will apply for funding, capital funding for the entire project. That's anywhere from 9 months to a year's worth of review time. During that phase, we would move on. If we can identify funding for that phase, we would move on from this feasibility phase, so just early stage schematic, to the full design development. So full design drawings, full construction drawings, another round of costing estimates. So that's the real design phase of the program. And we would do that concurrently with the review of the funding applications that we put in. And the reason for that is we have that final timeline of March 2026 when we need to be breaking ground on that site. So we're going to encapsulate as much work as we can in the next year so that roughly around this time we're able to break ground and meet the requirements around receiving that land. Any questions on the timeline? Thank you.
There you go, perfect. So with that, starting with the seed funding, we had to submit a bit of a test fit, very high level concept, what could fit on this site through that funding phase. So I'm gonna have Matthew speak to the site test fit.
Thanks. Greg mentioned being a good neighbor, and I'm an architect, but also a resident. So Kelly and I live actually across Palliser Trail in Cougar Point, and so we're very excited about this project and what it's going to bring to Canmore. But in terms of what informs our design process and what a sketch like this is about, and again generated by our team, not just a single person, but really this was to garner seed funding for the feasibility study that we're working on now. And so it's not a final design by any means. Bronte mentioned the word test fit, and I think it's important that this is not set in stone. One of the things we're informed by, and Greg touched on some of the site forces, as we call them, includes view corridors. Spaces between buildings are really important too, to give this character and make it fit in this site specifically. The other big item that we always look to formulate a what we heard statement is from the operator. And so we're going to hear from Ebony in a little bit too, and there's been recent development with them potentially being the main operator for this site. But those two things together are what drive design of its place and of its time. And so we're going to take those things into account as we move forward into this schematic design process. We're excited about that. Just to summarize quickly, though, what you're looking at here, these buildings are roughly 60 feet deep, so it would be a double-loaded corridor. There'd be roughly 10 units per floor, and according to your ARP, a 6-story height density would be appropriate for this site. And so doing the math, assuming we'd have some retail or other amenity opportunity perhaps on the main floor, this is about 340 odd units of potential development. And again, the spaces between the buildings, the view corridors, those social spaces that you're seeing hinted at here in the sketch are really good opportunities, balanced with the site access, safety, parking, etc. But in a nutshell, this is a test fit that we're excited about and essentially garnered us feasibility funding funds. So I'm going to leave it at that.
So there's a traditional design process, and Matthew talked a little bit about that. So viewscapes, site orientation, protection from the elements like wind that are used in these design programs. But the funders also have a program that we need to follow in order to achieve their goals. It starts with partner-informed design. And in a situation like this, what that is related to is us reaching out, like we did through the fall, to a variety of nonprofit housing operators to understand the need in the community and the types of populations that are marginalized and need support and are looking for housing here. And for those populations, what types of social services or supports help enhance their experience in affordable housing. So we've done some of that now, but now we have to be very specific about reaching out and understanding those needs and then designing solutions into this project. So when we talk about partner-informed design, it's about hearing from those who will be living in the units, hearing from those who will be providing supports, and trying to incorporate those needs into the design program. We also have critical sustainability targets. So the funding requires us to meet a very specific TUI, total energy use intensity target, which is 80. It's just 80. I can't explain what it is, but it's about it's about the amount of energy that's used in this project. I equate it closely to net zero. If we can achieve net zero, we achieve that specific FCM TUI requirement. So we're trying to achieve that on this site. Unfortunately, we have some success with affordable housing and achieving this target in the past. So we'll be working on sustainability modeling to find what is the sweet spot between building envelope insulation, between the types of heat sources, air changes in the building, mechanical ventilation, what is going to allow us to meet that target. There are accessibility targets. They're pretty straightforward to meet. About 20% of the units need to be accessible, but we've been trying for a number of years now. We've been setting our own target of universal accessibility. So as much of the building and as much of the units that can be accessible, that's what we target. We haven't achieved 100% accessibility on a building yet, but we're usually in the 60 to 80% range, which is significantly higher than that requirement. And that's important because when we apply for this capital funding, all of the projects that are submitted in that same month across Canada will be competing for dollars. So we will be evaluated not only against the criteria, but also against the other submissions that are in there. So when we can exceed targets, it's helpful to the application. We have to identify partners. So we'd like to see a variety of affordable housing providers participate in this. And so we will be continuing our dialogue with the ones we reach out to see if we can incorporate more than one user in the site. We want to find partners for the commercial retail space. What is the right businesses to incorporate in this building to support the population there and to add more amenities to the community? And if there are some social enterprise needs in the Bow Valley that could participate in this project, we want to know what those are and see how they would fit in as well. And partners are really important to the funders because they're trying to achieve more than just the affordable housing units. They're trying to meet a whole variety of goals. So that's what we'll be doing in these 5 months. And lastly, and maybe most importantly overall, is financial viability. If we can't prove that this is financially viable, that it will sustain itself for the next generation, then we wouldn't achieve any of the funding. So we will be doing ongoing financial evaluation starting right now, all the way through. Probably weekly we'll have financial updates right through until we report back to you at the end.
Thanks, Lee. And through identifying partners, one potential partner that we looked at, it seems to meet quite a few of the criteria, looking at the entire program of what could be offered on the site, is we were looking at partnering with the YWCA in Banff. So I'm going to have Ebony speak to the YWCA and a little bit about their organization.
Thanks, Bronte. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council, community at large. I just want to take a minute to introduce what I think is the entire second row here today. My team from the Y, Steve, Reeve, Lindsay, Emily, Ray, and Sarah Freeman from our board. as well as what I hope through the magic of online virtual connection, dozens that are joining us here today online. At the Y, we're steadfast in our mission, which is about shaping a safe and inclusive Bow Valley for all. We've been providing services in the Bow Valley for over 100 years. We provide housing, shelter, transitional housing, support for those who've experienced domestic and sexual violence, advocacy, and a ton of community-based programs, including spaces that we exist in related to prevention of violence. We really feel that these aren't just services, but these are often lifelines for people that are in crisis. In 2022, a mother named Carrie, which is a pseudonym, entered into our residential program with her son. Through the support of our transitional housing program, Carrie began to heal and rebuild her life. Over 3 years, she stayed with us for periods of time, totaling 613 nights. While she has a network of people in the Bow Valley, many wraparound supports and services that she's reached out to and that she's facilitated over this period of time, she did not, for periods of time, meet the need to reside in Banff, and finding safe, adequate, affordable housing in Canmore was a real challenge. We know that her journey is not linear, and we also know that her journey is not unique. She experienced trauma and violence during this time, which I know is not a story that is unusual to many of us, and she found healing, reconnected with her family, and ultimately did secure housing. I think for us at the Y, Carrie's resiliency and determination inspire us every day, and her story reminds us why accessible, affordable, compassionate housing options are critical. And we must do what we need to do in order to meet these folks where they're at and ensure that there is housing for all. We also know that the population of Canmore is expected to double in the next 20 years. The Y is currently one of the largest affordable housing operators in the Bow Valley, and currently we sit with a wait list of over 250 applicants who are all seeking affordable housing for themselves and their children. We also know that sexual assaults are the only form of violent crime in Canada that is not declining, and therefore we need to make sure that we have housing and shelter available to folks so that they can continue to live here without experiencing violence in our communities. Lastly, I want to remind everyone, we're here today. We're so ecstatic, if that's not obvious, to be invited as part of the project team today, but this is not new territory for us. Since 2017, we've been working tirelessly towards a project like this. We've researched, we've planned, we've collaborated to ensure that we're prepared to meet the needs of the community. We also work closely with many other providers in Canmore, the Homelessness Society of the Bow Valley, and I think Jess is here today, Chris from Canmore Community Housing, and Ian from Bow Valley Regional Housing, who I think is joining us online. We've built these relationships, expanded our capacity, and really honed in our experience. And we really feel like this Mustache Lands project, higher ground, maybe, potentially, can represent the vision for what we see for this community. And we're ready to act now. Thanks.
Thank you, Ebony. I'm going to have Kelly, I apologize, to come speak to engagement and the engagement process for the next phase.
Your Worship, Council, I'm so glad I didn't have Bronte's role today because this could have been drawn out really long. I'm Kelly Learned, as introduced previously. I run a small consulting firm based out of Canmore, reside in Canmore with my husband and children, and what a day to be here. I mean, this is such an exciting project opportunity for Canmore, and it's essential for Canmore. My role in the process is to work on supporting engagement throughout the design iterations and working with different stakeholder groups, different partners, to really understand what their needs are in a project like this. And essentially, if you think of it as a bit of a puzzle, we find the pieces and how they fit together. So that's what we'll be working through between now and May to get to feasibility. We have a lot of work ahead of us in a short amount of time, admittedly, but our team has been through this type of process on several other projects. And we have a tested, tried, really successful approach to doing this type of work. What we do is we listen first, We design, we translate that into a concept, we test it again with those that are potential partners, potential users of the site, potential residents, and then we keep testing and iterating as we go through the process to make sure that it makes sense, and we get to feasibility so that we have a successful application for funding. So you'll be hearing more from us. We'll be working with the town in terms of next steps and the why on stakeholder analysis, stakeholder identification, and then we'll be designing the process itself to make sure that it's the right fit for this site and this project. So thank you for having us here today. We are beyond excited to get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think that wraps up our presentation. I would like to thank everyone here today, the project team and partners, and council, yourself and worship. Thank you so much. We're very excited to be here and to get this project kicked off. Are there any questions?
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you to all of you for being here and for all of the presentations. Yes, it's very exciting. This is a major initiative and step forward in our work to deal with the housing crisis here in Canmore. And that number of units is a significant move forward. And I'm very excited about what we're going to see happening in the next year. And a little bit. I mean, groundbreaking could be 13, 14 months from now, right? In fact, has to be.
Has to be, yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
it will be, yeah.
Yeah, so, just thank you for the presentation today. Thank you for this good news. And, we are getting to the point where we're having something on our agenda almost every meeting with regards to housing, and that's by design because it's the number one priority of this council because it's the number one need in our community. I do have a couple of questions. They relate to, I think it's a very interesting idea with Banff YWCA being the potential operator because of their experience and all of the good work that they do. I just want to make sure, because I know that the question will arise, the foundational principle going forward that it would be open to all people in residents of Canmore that need to have a home, and it wouldn't be just related to Banff YWCA programs, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a nod in affirmative.
Yes,
And I know that there's quite a list on the YWCA's list in Banff, but of course in Canmore it would relate to, there would have to be that Canmore connection. Yeah. Be employed in Canmore, whereas Banff has their need to reside. We need to have our programs providing housing for those who have that direct connection and need to be in Canmore, right? Yeah, I'm seeing a nods into the affirmative as well. So I just wanted to put those out there just to make sure, because I know we may get asked that. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all for your presentations. I think we all know why that March deadline is important, but I don't know that it was actually spelled out in the presentation. And I wonder for those, just tuning in now, why is that March deadline so key?
I have Ms. Smithers here who's eager to answer that question.
I'm sure she is.
Sure am. So the land in question is provincially owned land at this point. We have entered into a reservation agreement with the province for the town to use that land to provide affordable housing. That agreement is contingent upon us breaking ground within 3 years of signing the agreement. So it's actually, I believe, April 2026, but I'm good to go with March. That's the significance of that. Really, we've got a lot at stake in hitting that target.
Thank you, Ms. Smithers. I appreciate that clarity for everybody at home.
Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for everyone for the presentation. So there's 6 buildings, 330 plus units. Are all of those units going to be operated by the YWCA, or is there a mixture?
So that's something we're going to work through the feasibility phase. The YWCA is the proposed lead operator, but that's something we're going to work through. That's what the feasibility is going to tell us.
And then this might come out in the process, the units will be for long-term tenancy, or?
Yeah, I think that's the goal. Amir, do you want to speak any bit more?
I'll maybe just share, we actually just had a meeting this morning with Kelly, talking about the opportunity that we see just around the housing portfolio. And I know that there was a survey done, and, you know, Lee shared with me that there's businesses, a number of them, folks that are interested in supporting through multiple different ways. And so a big piece of work that we're entering into, right away is understanding like what that fulsome housing model can look like. And so Mayor Carzat, I really appreciate your comments too, just around the work that the Y does is specific at this moment in terms of the work that we do in Banff. 336 units or wherever it lies, north of 300 for sure, is a lot of units. And so I think on behalf of the whole project team, we really want to make sure we get it right and do a really good engagement to make sure that we're serving the community of Canmore in the best way.
Because I was thinking of some of the models that are currently delivered through the Y, changes that have already been announced to what the Y and Banff's focus will be in the future, and then what this project would look like for our community. Because I think what's top of mind is we need to be housing our workforce first. And I think there's a variety of needs out there. In particular, like I can think of like the family connection, not family, community connection. Like groups who there's groups of identifiable minorities and marginalized groups in our community that do not have access to housing, have not had housing provided for them in my lifetime. We've not seen an increase in social housing since I was 8 years old in this community, and I know because I was one of the first families who moved into them. So we have not served certain segments of our housing community as well. So knowing the Y's work, I was wondering how that might roll out, but it sounds like the feasibility study is the place to be. Thank you.
That's right, and we get some guidance from the funders on the types of affordable housing that they will support. So first off, it has to be rental housing. They won't support ownership housing. The other part of it is the deeper the lower the rents, which generally target more marginalized communities, those with lower incomes, the more the funders like to fund these projects. So we're looking not at near market housing, we're looking at much more deeper subsidy, deeper support, affordable housing on a project like this. Of course, there's going to be a range of rental rates because we have to generate enough revenue to be viable. But those are the guidelines that we're under right now. One of the key reasons why we brought the Y forward as our lead operator, potential lead operator too, was that they operate a successful worker housing program in Banff. And we would love to incorporate something like that here in Canmore, but the funders need to see an experienced operator experience with that type of program. And so having that just down the road, 20 kilometers, and bringing that level of experience here is one of the reasons why we think that FCM would fund worker housing here in Canmore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that. And there's definitely a benefit too, as the Palliser area gets built out, that it's not all under one type of operation, because then you're limited by the parameters of a single entity organization. It's good to have multiple entities moving forward in parallel and aligned. Yep.
Absolutely, and we are still open to all possible operators at this point. When we come back with the results of our feasibility study, that's when we will have honed the mix that we are recommending be on this site.
Yeah, very good. Councillor Ma?
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Worship. Great presentation, thanks so much. This is a good day, okay, because just around the corner we have our 100 Palliser complex with CCH. We're trying to get that launching shortly, and that's 181 units, and then to see another 330% potential units, that's half a dozen. So we're doing really great with trying to make things move forward. One of the things that really piqued my interest here as we transform Palliser into more of a full-fledged community is this introduction of commercial. Could you speak a little bit towards the commercial retail units? Do they have a certain perspective? Are they being run in a social way? Just curious if there's any sort of like eyes towards that.
Yeah, the rough engagement we did on commercial was started by our review of the town of Canmore's, I forget the name of the title of the report, but there was a report about 2 years ago about commercial retail. Thank you, that's the one. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah. And so it identified certain needs that exist in the community. So we started with that overview, and then we looked at what was possible on the site in terms of percentage of square foot of commercial retail. We're limited by the funding to have no more than 20% of the entire project to be commercial retail. In the instance of this, we think something in the neighborhood of 27,000 square feet, blocks of 3,000 square feet that could be blended together or could stand separately, are probably the right mix for the funders and also equate to the report, the guide of what's required in town. So things that we will be looking for are, it's what you would see that support any community. So coffee shops would be great, small grocery, like in the, very small, 3,000, 6,000 square foot size, so not a large full grocery store. Services for people who are living in there, and likely services for people who are passing through the town on the Trans-Canada, because it's a great pull-off. Grab something that you need and then move on from there. But we will be asking potential residents, housing providers, and then going out to the business community as well to say, what do you think would be successful in here? What do you need? So we'll have a much better range of options when we come back.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm just excited to see the commercial aspect coming into that part of our town. And I think it will do a lot to improve the quality of life there for existing residents in the Palliser area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Worship. My question was along the same lines as Councillor Ma. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that social enterprise side of that commercial
Sure, I'm going to
section.
ask, I need to talk about the social enterprise option.
Excellent, because my next question is for her as well, so.
Yeah, I think some of the other work that we're really excited to dive into is not just the opportunity around potential housing, but what is the opportunity to engage in other social services and nonprofits as it relates to social enterprise. And so when we think about what a social enterprise means is certainly that's driving revenue, but there's also some social aspect to it. And so thinking about partnering with childcare providers or other sort of social serving organizations in the space is something that we're really excited about. The other thing that we feel really proud about at the Y, and to answer your question, Councillor Graham, is that our revenue model. And so really high level, we get about a third of our revenue from fundraising and donations, a third of our revenue from grants, mostly from government, and then a third of our revenue does come from social enterprise activities. And so up until, well, I guess, in 2 months from now, we've operated a social enterprise hotel out of our space. We're actually switching or changing our social enterprise model and starting a big construction project on our site in Banff. So the social enterprise hotel as it currently operates, we're ending that operation and inviting SAIT to operate tourism and hospitality programs out of the school. And so what used to be an area where folks would come and stay at the hotel are now going to be areas where students would stay. So it isn't, it's not the programming part of our operation that is changing, it's just the social enterprise part of our operation that's changing. And so I think what this really speaks to is that a social enterprise can look like a multitude of things. It can look like, having partnerships with businesses and leasing spaces. It could look like operating a social enterprise hotel, or it could look like partnering with an educational institution and offering for them to offer programs and services if that's what the community needs. And so I think, again, the two key pieces are that there's revenue generation that's happening through the partnership and that there's some kind of social give back to the community. So we haven't identified what that would be. We're just starting some of that engagement now.
That starts to give us an idea of what direction we're going in, though. Thank you for that. This project it's a big project, 300 plus units. Can you talk to the capacity of the YWCA to take on a project like this?
Well, we got the second row.
And those are all fantastic, well-motivated people. I appreciate that.
And I don't want to discount the project team. We've had the opportunity to meet a few times with them as recently as just Friday. And I think, the Y has a lot of values. Collaboration and digging into opportunities are certainly two of them that come to mind. And we're prepared for this. I have somebody from my board of directors that's here today as well. And so there's backing from all levels within the YWCA. So our team, our board, and we've been, as I said in my presentation, talking about building and this opportunity in Canmore for a really long time. And so not only do we have, I think, internal capacity in order to move forward with this, we have the project team that the town has already been engaging with, and we also have a lot of community support. And so because we've been talking about this and because we've been moving in this direction for close to a decade now, we feel like we can bring together advisory committees. We feel like we can bring together pools of folks with different expertise that can continue to support the project. And internally, we've just undergone a new organizational structure to prepare for what's new happening at our BAMP site, but also in the hopes that this would come to fruition as well. So we're ready, we're staffing up, and we're really, really excited.
Thank you, Ms. Rempel. I really appreciate that.
And of course, keeping in mind, this is going into the feasibility study. And so this is the time where questions are asked and answers discerned. And if, whatever comes out of that, that's when people start to prepare and, as was mentioned, staff up. Because I don't think that it would be under the current capacity that anyone would be operating this. You'd need to grow. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation. Mr. Prevost, can I ask you a few questions? So you spoke earlier about the fact that these are meant to be rental units. Is there any room for cooperative models within the larger model, or is this going to be a straight one operator show?
So cooperatives are funded under the programs that we're looking at, and that could be possible. It's challenging to start a new co-op and provide the housing.
Yeah.
But if there was an existing co-op that was looking for units, looking to expand, that we would love to talk to that group as well.
Cool, that's great. And so the expectation is that each building could be discovered through the feasibility study, programmed differently? Is that?
It can be, but
based on the sheer number of
It also could be
doors.
parts of each building, or it could be just one building is different
Or
and all the rest
floor.
are together. Whatever the mix will come from all of this engagement that we do now.
Gotcha.
We're open to everything.
And I am happy to hear about the retail piece. Of course, we need to ensure that we align with the ASP. So I don't know if hotel is an appropriate use there. But in terms of the retail, there's the social enterprise and social serving, which would be very important in that neighborhood. And it should be important in every neighborhood, quite frankly. But my question is do you think there's any space within the feasibility to eke out whether there's room for startups or sort of like a vital homes for business, if that makes any sense? So it gives people a space to start their business, and then once they get their feet out from underneath them, they can move on to a market space.
A version of incubation space,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, that could be very viable there. We have to remember that traditionally in a project like this, the commercial retail is intended to generate additional revenue so that we can lower the rents in affordable housing. So again, it's going to be a mix, a sweet spot of how much is more social enterprise, lower revenue generating, and how much is market rates that generate enough to support more affordable housing. But we will work on that through the process. But the short answer is we're absolutely open to that as part of this project.
I think that there's a lot of, there's space to work within that as well as within the arts sector as well. I don't want to presuppose what you discover. And I am very, very happy to hear it confirmed that these units will be for Canmore residents first. Thank you.
Looking to see if there are any other questions. There's none. So I hope you all understand and hear the extreme interest with the various questions, and we want the answers that you're going to find now. But we'll have to. But we'll have to wait. And so thank you again for coming and sharing this good news. And I know that there will be some things coming to us very soon with regards to the grant itself. And then as the process proceeds, we will then deal with each step along the way. So anything else you wanted to add?
I think that's everything. Thank you so much for having us here today. We're really excited to get this process started and get the feasibility started. We are also as excited to figure out what we're going to find and this next step, and we can't wait to come back at the end of feasibility.
Awesome. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you then. And I anticipate that you're not going to want to necessarily stick around for our review of our council and admin reports. And so I expect that there's going to be some shuffling around, so let's just take advantage of that, and we'll have a break until 2:15. Okay, we're back. Next item on our agenda is E1, Councillor updates. I know that we covered a period where there was not a lot of meetings because of the holidays. That said, there was some information in there. Does anybody have any questions about anything in any of the council member updates? Councillor Mira.
Thank you. I just have one for Councillor Forbear. I'm just curious, I know the BIA had a little internal window decoration contest. I wondered if we know who the winner was.
We do,
Or-
and by
or is
we,
it- is
by
that
we, I
secret?
don't mean me.
Oh, is that something that's going to be revealed later on?
No, we know, I just can't remember.
Okay.
But I'll get that information to you, Karen.
Yeah, it's-
Councillor Mara, I can let you know that there were 20 participants.
Wow, great.
And that the plan is to build upon a similar thing for next year. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, I think, for the BIA. And I think Christmas events and vibrancy falls definitely within their mandate. And there's a commitment there to do more in advance. I think that planning is key, especially when you're into event production. And then I think that another significant change this year was, I think there was an investment in more lights as well for the streetscape. So, but yeah, it'll be back next year or this year. It's 2025 now. And then I'll find out who won and get back to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll then move to item F1, administrative updates. Any questions with respect to Section A, corporate strategic team? How about anything under B, municipal services? Councillor Merrow.
Thank you, Your Worship. I had one, and this would be for, I think, Mr. Mackay. When we're doing counts in Elevation Place per, it says 1,650 people per day, could that be more than one person? Or how do they count?
It could be more than one person. There's an automated system that essentially triggers when someone walks through the front doors of Elevation Place. So if you walked in and out, supposedly one person could walk in and out 1,600 times and get to that number.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That was just a question I was asked from the
That is
public.
recreation.
It's
Oh, it is.
one form.
It
Yeah.
is. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks. Good question. Any other questions under Section B, municipal services? How about Section C, corporate services? And then that leaves D, municipal infrastructure. Councillor Hillstead.
Thank you. With the unfortunate crashing of the control cabinet at the intersection, is any of that covered by the person's insurance that crashed into it, or how does that work? Or is it covered by the town's own property insurance?
My understanding is that it is covered by the town's insurance, so we paid for it to get the work done, and then we submitted the claim for insurance, but I can double check that and confirm that it's ours and not the individual's.
So it's possible then that the insurance would go after the other insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then also with that, has there been any thought to potentially putting any kind of barriers or things to prevent it happening in the future, like just some, good old concrete bollards or something so that those get hit before the box?
I could certainly take that back to the engineering team and discuss it. I mean, part of the challenge is that cut through that I understand that the vehicle went down is intended for pedestrians and cyclists. So if we put bollards in, at some point, we're impeding accessibility for the users we intended it for. But I can certainly take that away and see if there's future improvements that can be done.
Yeah, like what I'm thinking about is even like just like within like 2 feet of the structure, just something that it takes the hit before the other thing, because there's times where I've seen other equipment like that and they have just like a yellow painted,
Oh, in front of that, okay, sorry,
like
I
just directly in
misunderstood.
front of it. So it's not impeding anything, it's basically on the grass around it, just so that, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
you know.
sorry, I misunderstood. I
Yeah.
thought you were talking about the intersection and not the control box, but I'll
Yeah,
certainly.
just the control
yeah,
box
Yeah,
itself,
I
like
can
if-
follow up with staff and see if there's anything we can do there. That's a good question.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I used my phone a friend, and I can let you know that the first place of the window competition was Rocky Mountain Soap, and second place was Project A, and third place was Cooperators.
There you go. Excellent.
And then I did have a question about one of the correspondences in the Cal package. Is that next?
Sure, we'll get to that next. Just to make sure, see if there's any other questions whatsoever then on the administrative updates. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you. I noticed that we did a heat source pump workshop. I lost it on the page. Oh, half-day training session on air source heat pumps held for local trades. Do we know how many people attended?
Not offhand, but I can find out.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious. That's all.
Okay. All right then. Councillor Faubert.
Yes, I had a question around automated traffic enforcement and updates from the province on the interim guidelines. Is there still a moratorium on intersection safety devices or red light camera enforcement?
Mr. Mackay.
Is there still more, as in no new equipment?
Yes.
Since I'd have to reread it, since we don't have intersection safety devices, didn't apply to Canmore. As far as removing them is concerned, looking at implementing intersection safety devices is something that's on the radar for a protective services team, but isn't, yeah, pun not intended. However, we're not extremely familiar with the guidelines for establishing new zones for intersection safety devices. So there need to be some work done there to see if it's both feasible and of interest to council.
Because I think it's a worthwhile conversation around, and I'd frame it as a service level increase, because it's something that we don't do. It's something I was interested in the past, but there was a moratorium for no new devices, so not something that could be implemented until that moratorium is lifted. And then because of the way that our protected intersections are designed, right turns on red does create a risk for cyclists and pedestrians, and that's where I'm particularly interested in learning more in the future. So thank you for that, Mr. McKay.
If I could add, the equipment is one thing. There's also the need to demonstrate certain statistics that there's problematic intersections before you'd be able to implement a measure such as intersection safety devices.
All right, I'll say bye to that dream now.
Okay. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Worship. The Golf and Curling Club and the Copter, I'm just having a hard time. They are paying, what is Golf and Curling Club paying for taxes now? Or not paying for taxes? No, it's in finance point B.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on this one since I'm here. So I'm just refreshing my memory here. So we went through our copter renewals in the fall, and that was the one item that we'd highlighted for change. So the Canmore Golf and Curling Club had actually made some changes on their side with regards to their policies, and specifically the removal of members-only tea time that makes them more open to the public, which weighs favorably with regards to the copter regulations. And then also there's been some board decisions, generally golf operations there was some stuff around the cost, that golf is generally an expensive pursuit, but recent board decisions had supported golf and curling clubs being a community benefit and membership fees not being considered onerous. And so based on kind of those two factors, both what the club had done in regards to making it more accessible to the public and also board decisions supporting golf as being of community benefit, administration in conjunction with our assessor feel that they now meet the regulations of copter, whereas the previous decision, I believe it would have been 3 years ago, was at that point, based on the decisions available at that point, that they didn't meet. So we've gone the bylaw route. So our intention now is to actually rescind the property tax exemption bylaw that the Canmore Golf and Curling Club currently receives their exemption under. They're the only named organization on that bylaw, and instead our opinion at this point is that they would qualify for exemption under copter. So that was the other question.
Now in
Oh,
taxes.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I thought it was more context around what they were paying.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'll have
and
to.
the question was?
There was some nuance in the bylaw, and sorry, I'll just pull it up in front of me. There was a split. Bear with me.
Yeah, it's a while back, and I don't really recall either, but.
I believe council's decision at the time of the bylaw was that it was only a portion exempt, but I want to actually.
Yeah, we exempted,
50%?
we exempted the portion with respect to the golf property and not the restaurant properties.
That's right.
And perhaps the pro shop, I'm not sure.
I guess, are you looking, Councillor Graham, for a specific number, or were you just trying to understand what the change is going to be?
It appears to me that they're not paying any property taxes now under copter. Is that?
So under the current bylaw, so for 2024, the year we just finished, the exemption under the current bylaw was a 50% municipal property tax exemption. Now what we're saying is if we say that they qualify under copter, they would be 100% exempt.
Yes.
And there are decision points there for council if they would like to see something different, particularly around where there are licensed premises. Generally, we haven't gone that way. So for example, the Legion is exempt right now in some communities. Licensed portions of some of those community facilities are by bylaw, I believe, actually taxed by councils in other jurisdictions. So there are decision points there if that is something council would like us to pursue.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that update and clarity.
Any other questions on the administrative update? Seeing none. Any questions or comments around the council resolution action list? Councillor Faubert, you had something around correspondence.
I asked it.
Okay.
I thought we were there.
Okay.
I got confused.
Okay.
Not
I thought
for
you
the
were
first
asking
time.
with respect to
Yeah.
something in the report, so there you go. We've already covered that. Anything else then on the correspondence? Seeing none, I will now move as we go to item I-1. I'll move that the Committee of the Whole close the meeting to the public to prevent the disclosure of information that is subject to legal privilege in accordance with Section 27, Sub 1, Sub A of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Oh, and yes, so for our viewing audience, there's no decisions to be made coming out of this. And so when we do finish the closed session, we'll just be adjourning. And so we're going to be terminating the streaming for this meeting right now.